This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor.
This is just me talking about my personal financial journey. This is for entertainment purposes only.
Enjoy the show.
Imagine hitting the ultimate financial milestone. You know, you've been grinding for years, watching your budget, sweating over every unexpected expense.
Oh, yeah, the absolute grind.
Right. And then finally your bank account hits this number where you can just breathe.
Yes, the spreadsheet finally looks good.
Exactly. Your shoulders drop, you walk a little taller. That persistent low-grade hum of financial anxiety that's just been playing in the background of your life simply shuts off.
And that is the exact moment it happens.
Yeah. According to evolutionary psychology, that exact sigh of relief, that newfound confident posture, is the precise moment you inadvertently paint a massive target on your back for total financial and emotional ruin.
It is the ultimate paradox of success. I mean, you spend a decade building a fortress, only to realize that the very act of finishing the walls is what signals the invaders that there is something inside worth taking.
Wow.
Yeah. The moment you stop acting like a survivor, you become a target.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are looking at a stack of notes today that outline a highly specific, very modern behavioral dilemma, a scenario where biology, finance, and psychology all sort of collide in a way that is, frankly, terrifying.
It's incredibly dark, but fascinating.
We are talking about the crossroads of legacy and wealth, specifically focusing on the polarizing concept of the baby trap. And our mission today is to explore this not as, a morality play, but as a high-stakes psychological game.
Right. We have to be completely objective here.
Exactly. We are going to look at two distinct, incredibly extreme reactions that a man can have when he realizes he has stepped into this trap. And let me tell you, neither of these reactions is what you would expect.
Because conventional wisdom fails completely here. It just does.
Yeah.
We are looking at human beings as strategic actors operating under these deep, ancient evolutionary drives, but they're suddenly forced to navigate the modern family court system and 21st century wealth dynamics. It's a brutal environment to analyze.
So let's set up the board. The starting point for this entire dynamic hinges on a highly specific tier of financial stability. The notes pin this at a liquid net worth of around $150,000.
Yes, $150K.
Now, intuitively, that feels like a random number. I mean, why not $1 million? Why not 50 grand? What is the actual mechanism behind this specific threshold?
Well, to understand the mechanism, you really have to look at how financial runway dictates neurochemistry.
Okay.
$150,000 in liquid assets, meaning cash, or easily accessible index funds, not, tied up in home equity, represents a very specific psychological inflection point in the modern economy.
Right.
It's not buy a yacht money. It's not retire at 30 money. It is buffer money.
It's the gap between a crisis and an inconvenience. Like if you have $5,000 in the bank and your car transmission explodes, that is a full-blown crisis. You are figuring out how to get to work, how to pay rent.
You're panicked.
Right. But if you have 150 grand and the transmission explodes, it's just an annoying Tuesday. You just write the check and move on.
Exactly the shift I'm talking about, because when a person operates below that buffer, their brain is in a chronic state of low-level sympathetic nervous system activation.
Fight or flight.
Yes. The fight or flight response is constantly humming, constantly scanning the horizon for financial threats. But once you cross that threshold, the amygdala downregulates. The survival instinct shuts off.
Wow.
And this causes a profound involuntary change in outward behavior. A man at this level stops checking prices on menus. His physical posture actually changes. He stops hurrying. He moves through the world with this unforced, deeply authentic ease.
And that ease is the beacon. That's what signals to the world that he has resources.
It is arguably the most powerful signaling mechanism in human social dynamics because, look, you can fake a luxury watch.
Oh, absolutely.
And you can lease an expensive car, but you cannot easily fake the relaxed parasympathetic nervous system of a man who knows he can survive a localized disaster. That authentic confidence signals competence, stability, and most importantly, resource accumulation.
Which triggers the trap.
Exactly.
The opposing force in this scenario is a woman who identifies this precise behavioral shift. She sees the unforced confidence, she recognizes the resource stability, and she targets him. Now, we need to break down her motivations objectively because I think it's easy to slip into cartoon villain territory here. But the psychology is much more pragmatic than that.
It is deeply pragmatic. This isn't a a Disney movie, and it isn't some mustache-twirling plot. It is a biological imperative executing a highly sophisticated strategy.
Right.
The motivation here is to anchor this man into her life to secure two intertwined goals. First, the biological benefits of reproduction specifically, securing a genetically competent partner.
And the second.
Ironclad financial security for the offspring.
And the really jarring part of this analysis is the timeline. The relationship, the romance, the dating phase, these are all framed as short-term mechanisms to secure a long-term contract.
Yes.
Like, the end goal isn't necessarily a 50-year marriage. The end goal might very well be divorce, provided the legal framework of that divorce guarantees the transfer of his resources to her and the child.
You have to view the marriage or the partnership simply as the vehicle. It is just the legal scaffolding required to initiate the resource transfer.
That is wild.
In evolutionary psychology terms, she is essentially securing a host for her own legacy. She requires his genetic material and his accumulated labor, his wealth, to ensure her offspring have the highest possible statistical chance of thriving in a competitive environment.
So the romance is secondary.
Completely. If the romantic entanglement dissolves, the biological objective has still been achieved.
It's essentially treating the family court system as an investment vehicle. I mean, you put in a few years of relational equity, you produce the child, and you legally guarantee a dividend stream in the form of child support and alimony that lasts for decades.
That is the structural reality of the trap. It weaponizes the man's biological desire for connection and his newfound financial stability totally against him. It locks him into a legally binding resource extraction paradigm.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, well, the obvious answer is to just run.
Of course.
You spot the manipulation, you see the trap, you get out. But that brings us to the first of our two archetypes, and this is where the psychology gets genuinely wild. We're calling Path A the pragmatic fatalist.
Very fitting name.
Right. And we're starting here because this man completely shatters the conventional expectation of self-preservation.
He really does, because the standard model of human behavior assumes that if an individual becomes aware of a threat, they will take action to avoid it. The pragmatic fatalist breaks that model entirely.
Because he knows that is the massive counterintuitive twist of Path A.
Yeah.
This man is not a naive 22-year-old being led by the nose by a manipulative partner.
Not at all.
He is highly observant. He sees the strings. He understands the psychological profile of the woman targeting him. He calculates the high probability of a future divorce, the loss of his assets, the emotional manipulation. He looks at the bear trap, sees the rusted iron teeth, and he deliberately steps into it anyway.
He does not walk in blind. He walked in with full situational awareness.
But hold on, I have to push back on this. How does any rational human brain justify that? If he sees the ambush waiting for him, why put his foot in the trap?
It's a great question.
It makes me think of military history. Is it like a general who looks at a heavily fortified enemy position, knows that if he sends his troops in, he's going to take catastrophic, like 90% casualties, but he sends them in anyway, because capturing that one specific bridge is the only way to win the decades-long war?
What's fascinating here is that your bridge analogy captures the exact psychological weight of the decision. The pragmatic fatalist operates on a time frame that extends way beyond his own lifespan.
Oh.
The core psychological driver, the absolute unyielding motivation that overrides his basic instinct to protect his daily peace and his bank account, is the primal desire for an heir.
The bloodline, the continuation of his genetic code.
Yes. For this archetype, achieving a biological legacy is the bridge. And he has concluded that capturing that bridge is worth taking 90% casualties to his wealth, his autonomy, and his emotional well-being.
Wow.
He recognizes that the modern environment is hostile to his interests, but he accepts the hostile terms because he views the alternative genetic extinction as completely unacceptable.
So his peace of mind, his freedom, his hard-earned $150,000, all of that is suddenly just currency. It's no longer the goal. It's the budget he's willing to spend to buy a child.
It is entirely transactional. The pragmatic fatalist has managed to separate the concept of family from the modern romanticized concept of happiness.
We are so conditioned to link those two.
Exactly. We are conditioned to believe that marriage and children are supposed to bring daily joy, partnership, and emotional fulfillment. He has discarded that notion entirely. He views the manipulation, the emotional friction, and the looming financial ruin of a divorce simply as the cost of doing business.
The cost of doing business. That is a chilling way to look at the person you were having breakfast with.
It really is.
It strips away every romantic ideal we've built up over the last 2 centuries and reverts right back to feudalism. It sounds like a medieval monarch who marries the princess of a rival nation.
Yes, a purely strategic alliance.
Right. He knows she despises him. He knows her family wants to conquer his lands, but he marries her anyway, strictly to produce a legitimate heir for the throne, because without an heir, the kingdom collapses the day he dies.
It is the exact same calculus, just playing out in a modern suburb instead of a stone castle. He is purchasing a biological receipt of his own existence, and he is paying for it with his life's energy.
Let's pull this down from the philosophical level and look at the actual daily reality of Path A. Because making a calculated sacrifice in your head is one thing. Living with the consequences of a sprung trap for 20 years is another.
It's a completely different reality.
What does this guy's life actually look like once the child is born and the woman's long-term plan executes?
The daily reality is incredibly grueling, and it typically manifests in 2 distinct, overwhelming pressures. The first is the psychological toll of alienation. The text highlights this as a severe and highly probable outcome.
Okay, alienation.
Because the woman's primary objective was resource extraction and offspring security. Once the child exists, the man's presence in the home may no longer be required or even desired.
So we were talking about a scenario where the relationship fractures, the divorce happens, and she secures primary custody.
Yes. And beyond just the legal custody arrangement, there is the insidious process of emotional alienation. He is legally mandated to fund the child's life. He is paying for the roof over their head, the food they eat, the schools they attend. But he is systematically pushed to the periphery of the child's actual existence.
Imagine a Tuesday morning for this guy. He wakes up at 5:30 a.m., he goes to a high-stress job, he grinds out a 10-hour day, dealing with office politics, managing crises, generating value. And when he gets his paycheck, a massive percentage of it is automatically garnished and sent to a household he is not allowed to enter.
He becomes a utility.
He might get to see his child every other weekend, maybe for dinner on Wednesday, but he is completely cut off from the daily rhythm of parenting. He doesn't know what his kid had for breakfast. He isn't there to help with the math homework. He's been reduced from a father to a glorified ATM.
And he knew this was a possibility when he stepped into the trap. That is the tragedy of the pragmatic fatalist. He bought the existence of his bloodline, but he sacrificed the experience of being a father. He is watching his investment grow from behind a pane of soundproof glass.
Which brings us to the second overwhelming pressure, the financial treadmill. Because that buffer, that $150,000 that made him feel so secure and confident, that gets obliterated.
It vanishes almost instantly in family court. The legal fees, the asset division, the establishment of 2 separate households. The man who once walked with a relaxed parasympathetic ease is now thrust back into a state of chronic financial terror.
But this time, the baseline is much higher.
Exactly.
Let's frame this using a financial risk management analogy, because I think it exposes the absolute madness of the math here. Tell me if this holds up.
Let's hear it.
Is a pragmatic fatalist essentially an investor who intentionally dumps all of his capital into a toxic, highly volatile asset? Like, he finds a company that he knows is structurally unsound, the CEO is corrupt, the board is manipulative. He knows with near certainty that the company is going to declare bankruptcy in 5 years.
Okay.
But he pours every dollar he has into it anyway, solely because it pays out one single unique dividend right before it collapses.
Yes, and the dividend is the child.
Right. And once the company goes bankrupt, once the divorce hits, he doesn't just lose his initial investment. The court orders him to continue paying off the company's debts for the next 18 years. He is legally bound to a sinking ship, bailing water with a bucket, just to ensure that the one dividend he extracted survives.
It is the ultimate high-risk, zero-yield financial position. And to synthesize how he justifies this, let's look at it through the lens of a chess match.
I like that.
The pragmatic fatalist is playing a game where he is knowingly, purposefully sacrificing his most powerful pieces.
He's throwing away the queen, the rooks, the knights. He's giving up his wealth, his daily peace of mind, his freedom to travel, his ability to retire early.
He is letting the opponent systematically clear his board, and he allows it because the only rule of chess that matters to him is the survival of the king.
The bloodline.
The king represents his genetic lineage. As long as that king remains on the board, the game technically continues. It doesn't matter if the king is trapped in a corner, stripped of all its defenses, terrified and immobilized. As long as it isn't checkmated, his biological mission is fulfilled.
But what a bleak, exhausting victory, if you can even call it a victory. He survives, his line survives, but his actual lived experience is just decades of indentured servitude to a hostile partner.
It is a profound sacrifice.
It's a terrifying prospect, which makes it completely understandable why someone would look at that scenario and say, absolutely not. We need to shift gears and look at the exact opposite reaction. We have to contrast the fatalist with the second archetype to really grasp the full weight of this dilemma.
We must, because the second archetype views the exact same chessboard and refuses to sit down at the table.
We are calling Path B the hyper-rational lone wolf. This is the guy who hits that same financial milestone. He saves his 150 grand, he gets that confident stride, the target appears on his back, and the manipulative force approaches him. He sees the baby trap being set, but his reaction is pure radical avoidance.
He identifies the threat vector and neutralizes it by removing himself from the equation entirely.
He just walks away.
The lone wolf's core motivation is the antithesis of the fatalist. Where the fatalist prioritizes the abstract concept of legacy above his own suffering, the lone wolf hyper-focuses on the immediate preservation of his resources and his autonomy.
My initial reaction to this, and I think a lot of people would agree, is that this sounds like the smart move.
It certainly appears that way on the surface.
Especially in our modern, hyper-individualistic culture. We are constantly told to protect our peace, to set boundaries, to avoid toxic people. He sees a bad deal and he walks away. He keeps his money. He keeps his quiet mornings. Nobody is siphoning his paycheck. Here's where it gets really interesting. Is this an actual victory, or is it just a different, quieter flavor of extreme sacrifice? Like, is he building an impenetrable fortress to protect himself from the invaders, but that fortress is so sealed off that it ultimately just becomes his own tomb?
That is the profound paradox of the lone wolf. You use the word victory, and on a spreadsheet, it absolutely is.
The numbers look great.
Oh, perfect. He achieves total financial security. His assets compound uninterrupted. He maintains absolute control over his time and his geographic mobility. But human beings are not spreadsheets.
Right.
We are deeply social, tribal organisms wired over millions of years of evolution to connect, to pair bond, and to reproduce.
So to choose the avoidance strategy, he has to actively suppress a massive part of his own biological programming.
He has to build a psychological dam to hold back millions of years of evolutionary pressure. And the harsh reality of that choice is an existence defined largely by absence. The fortress metaphor is perfect. The walls keep the invaders out, but they also ensure that he is the only inhabitant.
Think about what Thanksgiving looks like for the hyper-rational lone wolf at age 65.
It's a very quiet scene.
He has a pristine house. His retirement accounts are fully funded. He has a luxury car in the driveway and absolutely zero debt. But he is sitting at a dining table alone. There are no children coming to visit. There are no grandchildren running around spilling juice on his expensive rugs.
There's no legacy.
There's no messy, chaotic, beautiful human noise in his life. He has to sit in that quiet house and grapple with the incredibly heavy existential reality that he is the period at the end of a very long sentence.
That is the psychological toll of the void. He possesses the resources, but he has no one to resource. And to intentionally sever oneself from the biological continuum, to look in the mirror and say, I am the last of my line. My family name, my genetic history, it all permanently ends with me. That requires a level of detachment that borders on the unnatural.
He's essentially choosing comfortable extinction.
Yeah, it is. He had protected his wealth perfectly, but the moment his heart stops beating, all of that accumulated energy, all of that life's work, simply disperses. It goes to distant relatives or a charity or the state. The empire he built has no heir.
Which brings us to the grand debate. We have laid bare these two extreme paths and the catastrophic losses associated with both of them. On one side, we have a man bleeding himself dry, suffering daily manipulation and emotional alienation just to leave a genetic echo in the world.
And on the
other side, we have a man sitting on a mountain of gold in absolute deafening silence, watching his lineage turn to dust. So what does this all mean? If both of these paths require you to give up something so fundamental to the human experience, what does it actually mean to win?
That is the central question this scenario forces us to confront. And to really parse it out, we have to examine the underlying psychological forces driving these men. It essentially boils down to a debate between strength and fear, because how you define winning depends entirely on which of those forces you believe is truly at the wheel for each archetype.
Let's break that down, starting with Path A, the pragmatic fatalist. If we examine his choice through the lens of strengths, it's actually a compelling narrative. You can argue he is demonstrating the ultimate stoic resilience.
He is enduring the fire.
He is enduring tremendous personal suffering, swallowing his pride, and absorbing a massive financial beating for the sake of the future. He is planting a tree knowing he will never sit in its shade. He is sacrificing himself for the tribe. That sounds incredibly noble.
It is the narrative of the martyr, and there is undeniable strength in the capacity to endure suffering for a goal larger than oneself. But let's flip the analytical lens. What if we look at the pragmatic fatalist through the perspective of fear?
Okay, what is he afraid of?
He is terrified of mortality.
Oh, wow.
He is driven by a profound primal terror of being forgotten, of fading into the infinite nothingness of time without leaving a mark. Is his willingness to accept a life of daily misery, to be manipulated and alienated, really an act of strength? Or is it a desperate, ego-driven capitulation? Is he so terrified of his own impermanence that he will pay any price, even his own dignity, just to leave a biological receipt that proves he was here?
Wow. So his sacrifice isn't really for the child, it's for his own ego's survival. He is basically buying a very expensive living tombstone.
In that light, it is not an act of strength at all. It is an act of ultimate submission to his own existential dread.
Let's apply that exact same test to Path B, the lone wolf. If we look at him from the perspective of strength, this guy is a fortress of self-reliance. He maintains absolute autonomy. He looks at a societal dynamic that actively wants to drain his resources and use him as a utility, and he stands his ground and says, no, I belong to myself.
That requires incredible discipline.
It requires the ability to say no to your own biological urges, to say no to societal pressure, and to enforce impenetrable boundaries.
It is the strength of absolute self-mastery. But again, let us look at the shadow side. What happens when we analyze the lone wolf through the lens of fear?
He's afraid of getting hurt.
He is terrified of vulnerability. He sees the chaotic, uncontrollable nature of human connection, the very real possibility of betrayal, of loss, of financial devastation, and he's paralyzed by it. So he preemptively isolates himself to ensure he can never be wounded.
He avoids the pain of a bad relationship, but in doing so, he guarantees he will never experience the profound depth of a family. Is his fortress actually just a monument to his own cowardice? Is he hiding his money under a mattress because he's too terrified to invest in the unpredictable stock market of human relationships?
Precisely.
Yeah.
He mistakes isolation for security. He avoids the trap, but he also avoids life.
This is the ultimate agonizing trade-off. Is it better to sacrifice your wealth, your dignity, and your daily peace for a legacy you might not even get to fully witness because you've been relegated to the sidelines, to essentially become a martyr to your own biology? Or is it better to die wealthy, completely unburdened, and entirely free, but utterly alone, knowing your story ends the exact second you stop breathing?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the incredibly sobering insight is the suggestion that both men might ultimately lose. This scenario presents a modern tragedy where a clean, total victory is structurally impossible.
Because the game is rigged.
Both men are caught in a system, a violent collision of ancient evolutionary biology and modern socioeconomic reality that demands a pound of flesh. You cannot navigate this specific intersection without bleeding.
They just get to choose which flavor of devastation they prefer to taste: the noise, the pain, and the manipulation of the fatalist, or the silence, the coldness, and the isolation of the lone wolf.
The environment does not offer a utopian third option where the man keeps his wealth, effortlessly finds a non-manipulative partner who completely ignores his resources, and seamlessly builds a happy, risk-free family. By forcing us to examine these extreme poles, we see the inherent tension in the modern pursuit of both wealth and legacy. The grim reality is that under these specific parameters, you cannot have both. You must choose what you are willing to mourn.
That is a lot to process. It fundamentally shifts how you look at relationships, money, and the choices people make around you.
Yeah.
But it's exactly why we do this, to take these complex, sometimes dark behavioral scenarios and really dissect the mechanisms underneath them.
It's essential analysis.
So to trace our steps today, we explored the neurochemical shift that happens when a man hits that critical threshold of liquid wealth. We saw how that resulting confidence acts as a beacon, drawing in a deeply pragmatic biological strategy designed to extract his resources for the sake of offspring security. We watched the pragmatic fatalist deliberately walk into that fire, willingly trading his present emotional and financial ruin to purchase a biological heir. And we saw the hyper-rational lone wolf construct his impenetrable walls, successfully guarding his peace and his bank account while silently guaranteeing his own genetic extinction.
Two very different paths, leading to very heavy consequences.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into these heavy, incredibly complex archetypes. Because honestly, whether you find yourself sympathizing with the brutal pragmatism of the fatalist, or you strongly identify with the protective instincts of the lone wolf, these concepts force a mirror up to all of us. They force us to critically examine our own relationship with the numbers in our bank accounts, our innate drive for family, and our desperate need for autonomy.
Absolutely.
But as you go about your day, I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought to mull over on your own. Think back to that core psychological driver we discussed. If the human, ancient biological drive for a legacy is truly so potent, so overwhelmingly strong, that a perfectly rational, intelligent person would willingly walk into guaranteed financial devastation and daily emotional manipulation just to achieve it, what does that say about the illusion of our own free will? How much do we actually value our own individual comfort and happiness when it's stacked against the evolutionary imperative to survive through our descendants? Are we truly the independent, rational architects of our lives, carefully steering our own ships? Or are we, deep down, just highly complex biological vessels, blindly willing to bankrupt ourselves financially and emotionally, just to launch the next generation into the dark? Think about that. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.